Welcome back to another edition of the feature show. I'm your host, Jawairiya Tanveer, and this show is going to be looking at the relationship that schools in our local communities have with the parents of their schools. In the first half, I'm going to be speaking with Nic Ponsonby, Deputy Head Teacher at Challney High School for Girls, and Rehana Faisal, who is the Chair of Governors at Challney High School for Girls. And they are both so incredibly passionate about community and getting involved and strengthening that relationship schools have with the community. I'm going to be discussing with both Nic and Rehana where the passion stems from, the importance and huge role that parents play in getting involved with school community events, and what more can be done despite the immense work already being done. In the second half, I'm going to be speaking with a parent governor and a couple of parents to hear their perspective on the topic as well. I really hope you do enjoy. I want to start off by welcoming Nic and Rehana for joining me in this half of today's show. So, a very warm welcome to both of you, Nic and Rehana.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Now, Rehana, if I start off with you, you've been Chair of Governors here at Challney Girls for what will be 5 years coming up in March. And ultimately, we are hoping to inspire parents to get more involved with their children's education. Can you describe to the listeners what the role of a Chair of Governors is and why it is so important to have that role when it comes to supporting a school local in our community?
So governing bodies are really important. They draw from kind of a wide pool of people so that you've got all sorts of expertise on that governing body. For example, ours at Challney Girls, we've got representation from the college, we've got representation from primary schools, but also people from within our communities who can articulate local concerns, and very importantly, parents as well. So we've got parent representatives on that governing body. And the role of the governing body is to do what it says on the tin, actually, to see what's happening in the school, to make sure that we think that the school responds well to the educational needs of our girls, to make sure that things are running as they should be. We respond to concerns from parents and families, but just generally to ensure that the school is meeting the needs of our families and I guess sort of compliant in terms of national curriculum and ensuring that we've got all the right policies and procedures in place to make sure that the school runs well.
Okay, brilliant. Now, Rehana, you are a huge advocate for the young people here in Luton, and you work hard voluntarily in ensuring that they have the best opportunities and life chances. And I think that's evident with the Raise Up Foundation that you established recently, along with many others. Where does your passion come from? Because in such a short space of time, the Raise Up Foundation has done so much positive already for the community. So where would you say that passion comes from in committing to providing the young people with the best life chances and opportunities?
It comes from two things, and I'm never shy about talking about either of those two things. And one is that I am a mother. I want the very best for my children from the resources that I have around me. I want the very best for them. And that's what I want for other people's children. And I guess the second thing is my faith, which tells us that that's what we should have. So we should want for others what we want for ourselves. I wasn't born and bred in this town, but I've been here for quite a bit. And I wouldn't go back to, you always have a kind of affinity to your hometown, which I do, but I wouldn't go back because I think that this place is so full of life, energy, generosity, and our community spirit, I think, is second to none. So I feel really compelled, as I say, to make sure that all of our young people have the best chance in life as possible, because I recognize that there are lots and lots of things, lots and lots of barriers that our young people could face, which I know that I talk about quite a lot for people who know me, but there are lots of barriers that our young people face, whether that's our ethnicity, whether those are racial barriers, structural barriers, whether that's to do with gender. So Challney Girls is a girls' school. We know that women and girls face particular barriers, and whether that's religious, and again, we know that there, you know, many of our girls will come across and face Islamophobia, and that presents as a barrier. So it's, I guess, a kind of combination of just you know, being compelled by my faith to do the very best, and just this huge love for this community, you know, and being able to see this masses of potential that we have. And you see that, Jawairiya, I'm sure you'll say that, you know, when you walk around Challney Girls and you meet the girls and you see that that great energy and that all that potential that we have in there, and just to say, I really believe in those girls and that they can achieve what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you, Rehana. Now, Nic, if I come to you next, you've been at Challney Girls for 21 years, and I have to say you look exactly the same as how I remember you from when I was at school. You know Challney, you've been here for such a long time, you know the community, and I know that is a huge passion of yours.
Yeah.
And I know that Joe is also very passionate about developing that strong relationship with the community. Where would you say that passion comes from with you when it comes to giving back to the community?
I think there's a couple of things for me that stand out as well. And the passion for giving back to the community, I think Rehana's touched on it already. Being in the school for the length of time I have, and I've always said to people, you know, I'm here for a reason, and it's to make and give these girls the best chances in life, like you've already mentioned. But it's not only that. For me, the passion given back to the community is, I think every school in the country needs to make sure that their community is involved in school life, because that's what makes the links really strong. That's what makes communities work together. And I think for me, from the journey I've been on at this school for such a long time, and it's been a tough journey at times, but I think for me, it's really about what we give back to the community, then the community give back to us. And actually it's that real realization of we are all one community. We're a massively diverse community, but that doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter, no matter what the context of any school is. My passion came from, I'd have to say, first of all, being at school myself. We used to take part in like sort of really small scale fundraising things, but actually they were one of the things that stand out, and I remember mostly from my school days, alongside the sporting side and everything else I was involved in. But I would really say that I knew how much I really enjoyed that. And when we talk about memorable experience and cultural capital, those are the things in my school days that I look back and I think, actually, you know, we didn't raise anywhere on a par with what Challney Girls raise. And for me, it's not about the amount of money and a tick box. It's actually, the passion comes from seeing how much it can develop our young people and the girls that we work with in the school, and all girls in particular, and the confidence building that comes with social action, the understanding of charities, what the charities actually do, how they help people. So behind the scenes, I feel there's a lot more that goes on, and I love that side, because I love when our girls actually figure out what it is they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're going to help, what the money they've raised can contribute to, and so on. And I think that whole sense of community and coming together, I think our recent Race for Life speaks volumes, because I can honestly say, and I know this because I've looked and I continue to look, our families, our community, our girls, our staff, the sense of community spirit from that, I've never known, because no other school in the country has raised £17,000 in a day. And that speaks volumes about generosity, kindness, everything that we want our students to portray. And also alongside that, it enhances our sort of vision of developing influential women of the future.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Race for Life there, and I want to just take this opportunity to say congratulations to yourself, all the staff here at Challney, and the girls, the parents and the community for giving back. And it's like what you said, when you give to the community gives back. And we saw that with Race for Life, an incredible amount of over £17,000. And like you said, that was just one day.
Yeah.
So that is a huge, huge accomplishment. And I'm sure you agree that that sort of success wouldn't be possible without the support and engagement and relationship that the school has with its parents. So what would you say is so important? Why is it so important to ensure there is that strong relationship and engagement with the parents when it comes to events like Race for Life or otherwise?
I think obviously, you know, we can support our girls all day long in what they're doing social action wise, but I think when we engage with our parents and our community, that's further support for the girls and what they're doing, because it's not only, oh, this is just something I'm doing in school, but once we've got our parents taking an interest, which most and the majority of our parents absolutely do, because, you know, for example, on the Race for Life, we had parents that were sending in cakes for their daughters to sell, or there were samosas for sale, for example, pizza for sale. So I think the parental involvement for me is testament to how well the girls actually do as well, because without the parent support, then the girls are not as motivated with what they're doing. They are, of course, motivated, but I think when the parents are engaged with what the girls are doing, that level of engagement goes up. So it's absolutely paramount to what we do social action wise here. And just to sort of add to that, it goes to be said, the same happens in the community. So, you know, the Race for Life started with Denise Coates, who was a breast cancer survivor, coming in just ad hoc because she'd heard about what we do at Challney, and she came in, and, you know, 5 years on, she still comes in every single year to support us. We had representatives from the Luton and Dunstable Breast Cancer Unit, and I think what the community recognise is actually what we do, and they really value how much our girls and how much our parents and our community do to support those less fortunate than themselves.
Absolutely, and it's nice to kind of hear where Race for Life began 5 years ago, did you say?
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely, lovely. Rehana, as we've just heard, Challney Girls has had a lot of success, and Race for Life is just one example of that. And one of the other big successes that Challney Girls had was achieving Outstanding by Ofsted back in January 2020. And I know that from speaking with you previously, you've mentioned that your work here at Challney Girls is not done. I'm sure anyone who knows you knows that you're not just going to sit back and rest, you know, now that Outstanding has been achieved. Despite all the success that Challney Girls has had, what would you say your aspirations are for the work still yet to be achieved?
That's a really big question, and I think I wonder if the staff, you know, when they hear me say, "Well, you've got Outstanding, but that's not quite enough, guys," how that sometimes makes people feel. But I think we always talk about, you know, being beyond outstanding. So Outstanding tells us that we are doing the right things, that we've got all the right systems in place. But there is so much more, you know, and I know Nic feels the same, that we're always kind of thinking, what else can we do? And we know that there's a lot more. I just want to slightly go back to Race for Life, because I think it shows something really quite extraordinary about our communities. And it's also relevant in terms of what more do we need to do? £17,000, if given our school population, Nic will have probably an up-to-date idea of how many of our young people are eligible for free school meals, but we are much higher than the national average. We know that many of our families in Luton have been impacted disproportionately by the pandemic, and yet this year we raised even more than we did last year. And I remember having a conversation with our head teacher, Joe Miles, and Joe said the thing that I've seen from the Challney community is that they give more than they have. They give beyond their means. You know, to give an idea of the generosity, but also the context of our young people. So when we think about the context of our young people, it also kind of draws attention, I think, to where we might need extra support. So we talk a lot about cultural capital, and I think lots of the kind of traditional conceptions of cultural capital is about, you know, getting our girls to experience sort of potentially high culture, you know, things like Shakespeare and plays and things. But I think for me, it's also about teaching them to value who they are and what they bring. It's also about developing some of those kind of soft skills that we need to get through life. And we've been having lots of conversations around oracy and speaking skills, and just gearing up just to really ensure that we prepare them for life. You know, our tagline is influential women of the future. And kind of going beyond outstanding in terms of academics is to say, what do we need to do to really make our young girls, our young women, influential women of the future? What are all of those skills that they need? And really focus in on developing that kind of full range of skills.
Okay, brilliant, nice. And, you know, Rehana, you touched on something there, how Nic also feels the same about going beyond outstanding. And Nic, you know, you've been here for 21 years. I'm sure you've seen so much talent and potential just grow and come out of this school. And like Rehana said, the school motto is developing those influential women of the future. And I know that one of your aspirations beyond outstanding is the world-class framework. Yeah. Would you like to just kind of describe what that means to our listeners if they're not familiar with it?
Yeah, of course. I think what I'd like to first of all start by saying is, obviously, and I am pinching this from our head teacher, Joe Mines, as well. And it's something that resonates with anybody in outstanding schools, and that is really around the fact that outstanding schools never stand still. And that for us is, you know, the pandemic's obviously interrupted lots of our celebrations around our Ofsted outstanding. But actually, we don't stand still, because outstanding or not outstanding, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for more. So I think what my sort of vision on that is, and the school's vision very much, because I've now got a team working with me on this, is not only do we want to be recognised as an outstanding school in, you know, locally and in the UK, but actually we want more, and that is what we call a world-class school. And that for our students or girls here will be instrumental in making sure that they leave here with hugely high aspirations, hugely bright futures, which all of our girls do and will do anyway, but this just contributes a little bit more. So just to give people an example of what the kind of things that we're doing, we've really revamped our extracurricular program. So I've now got students and staff leading on things that some of them I didn't even know that some of the staff had these hidden talents among them. So for example, we've got a social awareness group, which 2 of our ECTs, and actually one of them is an ex-Challney girl as well, is leading on. And that's been just fantastic to see them grow and develop already. And they really do go out of their way to do that. We've got students in year 10 leading debating clubs for year 7 and 8. And to be honest, I've never seen a club like it. It's brilliant. And it just shines through the fact that we've got such potential in our students here at the school. And we just need to unleash that further. So I'm going to be working with a group of staff. My aim is that Challney girls will be world class by hopefully January 2022. Given the pandemic, it's slowed us down a little bit, but that's where we're heading. So really exciting times for the school, really nice developments around sort of student leadership for the girls. So really, really excited about that project that's coming up very soon.
Very exciting indeed. And I think one thing that stood out for me there is, you know, you've mentioned all these clubs that the staff and students are doing. And, you know, we have to remember they are giving up their free time during lunch and after school. And it's that commitment that they have to the school.
Absolutely.
Very exciting. Now, Rehana, you touched on something before. You touched on the barriers that specifically our young girls here at Challney face. And as you know, the girls in Challney come from mainly a Pakistani Kashmiri background, and there are stereotypes associated with being a Pakistani female, and I guess those stereotypes can put a cap on the aspirations. What would your response be to anyone who applies those stereotypes to our girls?
And one thing I will kind of say straight off the bat, there are regular conversations which I regularly interject in, which talk about raising aspirations within our communities. For anybody who knows us, for those of us who live in this community, who are part of this community, we're a hugely aspirational community. You know, many of us are here in this country partly because of our aspirations. And, you know, and we know that, you know, that some of these narratives are slightly contradictory, because you also hear on the other hand where people will say to you that, gosh, all Asian parents only want their children to be doctors and engineers, but at the same time we're having this parallel dialogue about how we need to raise aspirations. I think the real task that we have, and we talk about a lot at the foundation, is how do we enable aspirations? We know from our conversations, we know from, you know, the plethora of research out there, is that young children from minoritized, from racialized backgrounds are not doing as well as they should be. And one of the reasons for that is structural racism. It's about structural barriers. So, and we have those conversations quite regularly in the school as well. You know, I'm really pleased that Sarah and others have even sort of got girls involved in having some of these social issue conversations. We have them in schools, we have them as part of leadership. So we know that those barriers exist. But what I would say to anybody who talks about, you know, lack of aspiration, just give us a call and come and visit. Anybody who talks about that and talks about us in those terms doesn't really know us. And I think what it often obscures is those structural barriers, that if we kind of talk about communities of low aspiration, it's the communities that have to do something rather than the rest of us or the institutions around us. So, you know, you will have heard from the way that Nic speaks, from the way that I speak, it's very much about what we need to do for the girls. We very much recognise them as talented, full of potential, and it's our job to nurture all of that and bring that out and provide them with the best life chances.
Brilliant, thank you, Rehana. And you kind of mentioned a common stereotype there about how Asian parents want all the kids to be doctors or engineers or those, you know, big flashy jobs. You know, the parents of our girls, they come from a range of backgrounds and they are in a range of careers. And, you know, Nic, you mentioned Sarah, who is our current ECT, is also an alumni of Challney Girls, and you know, her background is more into kind of politics and history, and she's now a maths teacher, but her background is different to that. In your 21 years of being here, I'm sure you've seen so many girls grow up and enter a range of fields in a range of sectors, and I think some of them may be parents now themselves, I suppose.
I believe they are.
And even, you know, the girls that do come to school right now, their parents would have been Challney students as well in the past. So what are your views and your aspirations when it comes to using the parents of our girls as role models to, I guess, kind of tackle those stereotypes, for example, or in any other way?
I think, like Rehana's already mentioned, stereotypes, and it really isn't. I think it's changing, but it's a very gradual change, and it needs to be a quicker change. I sort of run the alumni at Challney Girls, and I think it's just an interesting point to mention first before I talk about the parental side, and that is that's ever changing as well. So, for example, we've got a young lady, I won't mention her by name, but I think she's also been on Inspire, an ex-Challney girl, and quite recently she's now got a job working with the FA. And she's getting herself involved in all sorts of, she's passionate about sport, she'll know exactly who I'm talking about if she listens in. You know, so things are gradually changing, but from an alumni point of view, if members of the Challney alumni, and we've got over, I think I've got over 1,800 on there now, which is fantastic. The eldest left Challney Girls in 1966. What's really interesting is you can see that change happening. So, you know, our girls don't go down the standard routes. Our girls are interested in way more than what anybody can imagine, and rightly so. And as a school, I think we do everything we can to promote that as well. So sort of through our careers frameworks, PDC lessons, you know, we take every opportunity to have any sorts of career talks, visits, workshops for our girls, because actually it's not just about that stereotypical job that might be mapped somewhere along the way, because things have completely and utterly changed. And I think using parents as role models, quite recently I had some parents in that want to offer me some workshops to work with our girls, and again, they are role models for our girls as well, and we have to sort of encapsulate that a bit further. I think there's room for improvement from a school point of view, where we can do more to have more of a footfall of parents through the door who can do exactly that for us. So again, something that I'm really passionate to do and develop over the next sort of few months as well. So for example, we need to have a PTA. There used to be one, I can't remember the last time there was one. I've been speaking to some parents that I know extremely well in school, and they sort of said, you know, Ms. Ponsonby, why do we not have a PTA at Challney? And I've sort of gone, actually, that's a really valid question. So, you know, there's room for improvement in what we need to do to sort of, not to engage parents more, because our parents are absolutely engaged, but actually what can we do to have them come through the doors and really contribute to school life and school improvement as we go along over the next few months?
Absolutely. Rehana, we have just about a minute left. If I just kind of finish up with you. You are from the community, you know the community. What is one thing you would say the community values from a school that is part of it values the most?
I think what they value is that high aspiration, and really, just really that high aspiration, and making sure that we're not damping our girls' aspirations, that we are listening to them, and that we are thinking about how we can get them get them kind of, education is like stepping stones, isn't it? But knowing where they want to go and how we can help them get there. So I think that high aspiration that we hold for our girls is really, really respected by our communities.
Brilliant, thank you. I want to thank you, Nic and Rehana, so much for giving up time out of your busy days to join me today. Thank you so much to both of you. Listeners, we are heading off to a break now, but please do stay tuned for after the break, where we will be joined by a parent governor and 2 parents of students who do attend local schools to hear their perspective on the topic as well. Thank you so much, Nic and Rehana.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the second half of the show, looking at the relationship that schools local to Luton have with parents of their schools. In the first half, I spoke with Nic Ponsonby, Deputy Head Teacher at Challney High School for Girls, and Rehana Faisal, who is the Chair of Governors at Challney High School for Girls, to discuss where their passion comes from in giving back to the community, the roles that parents play in the school community events, and in particular, we discussed Race for Life, which was one of the very recent and successful events that took place at Challney High School for Girls, which would not have been possible without the support of its parents. In this half, I'm going to be joined by Amna Khan, who is a parent governor as well as an accountant, Zeb Ahmed, who is a local parent, football coach and finance and planning manager, and last but not least, I will be speaking with Imrana Mahmood, who you will be familiar with already from Inspire FM. She is a freelance creative producer and will also be providing her perspective on the topic as a parent as well. Please do stay tuned to listen to my interview with Amna, Zeb and Imrana. I hope you enjoy. I want to welcome my guests for this half of the show. We have Amna Khan, Zeb Ahmed and Imrana Mahmood joining us today. A very warm welcome to all of you and Assalamu alaikum to all of you, and thank you for joining me today. Now, Amna, if I start off with you, you have been a parent governor at Challney Girls for 4 years. Could you describe to any parents who are listening what the role of a parent governor involves and what inspired you to take on that role?
Wa alaikum assalam, Jawairiya. Hope you're well. So effectively, the role of a parent governor is to be a representative of the parents who are key stakeholders at a school. And the parent governor is actually, they're in a unique position because they actually see the delivery of the service that the school provides through their own children. So because of that, they can actually provide valuable insight into how policy can be shaped or changed because of that viewpoint. So I think it's a very useful tool for the governing board to see this viewpoint. And I've seen it time and time again in the governing meetings as well. And also why I became a parent governor. Well, I'd say it was really my dad who inspired me. He was actually a parent governor at Challney High School for Girls many, many years ago. And he always said, if you want to make a difference, you need to get involved. So that's the policy I've taken. And, I'd rather be proactive than reactive. And then lastly, on that, my sister actually, sadly, she's passed away. She was actually a parent governor 4 years ago. And she passed away and the vacancy came along then. And that was when my elder daughter had just started. So I thought, well, now's as good a time as any. And, she used to talk about it a lot. She was passionate about it. So I think that was, the point where I thought, I think I should get into it. And that's how I became parent governor.
Okay, so it definitely does run in the family then. And I'm sure
it does.
I'm sure the future generation will carry on following in your...
Yeah, we're hoping to instill that confidence in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Zeb, you and Amna both have 2 daughters at Challney Girls, and I think what we see at Challney Girls generally is just how involved parents are with their children's kind of school lives inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. And we saw this recently with Race for Life, where parents were giving their daughters cupcakes or samosas to bring into sell at school and raise money for, what is a very good cause. And I know that you and Amna do both play a very active role in your daughter's school lives as well. Seb, why would you say it is important for parents to get involved with school community events?
Yeah, I mean, I think first thing I'd probably say is that I'd say parents should get involved with school or child's school life in general anyway. There's a lot of research out there actually that talks about how, no matter the income or the background, students with parents who are a bit more involved, they're more likely to have higher grades. They're going to be attending school much more regularly, and they'll probably do better in terms of their social skills overall, and then also show improved behavior. But if we specifically talk about the children's school community events, if I think about it a bit more deeply, at the end of the day, whether they admit it or not, children are always seeking validation from parents in pretty much everything they do. So for a parent or parents to be involved in their child's school community events, it actually encourages the children to do a bit more. They take it a bit more seriously normally if the parents are involved. And, they try to work a bit harder. So when it comes to things like fundraising, they double their efforts and everyone's a winner. So with the example that you just gave a minute ago with the Race for Life, I think, was it about 17 grand they raised? Is that correct?
It was.
But I think, that's brilliant. That is, there's probably not many schools in Luton who have raised 17 grand or across the country actually. So, and, just for the sake of your listeners, I think this was at Challney Girls where they raised money for cancer research and also the L&D hospital, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So here, I think, the parents were heavily involved. I know, especially not just my daughters, but I know a lot of other children, a lot of other girls who got Challney who were involved in. They were speaking to their parents about helping them raise money, and then they were reaching out to friends and spreading the word. So, it's really important that everybody gets involved. So when you get the teachers and the children working, it works really well. When you get the children and the parents working, that works really well as well. But when you've got the teachers and the children and the parents, that's where the real magic happens. And again, it's really important for everyone to be involved.
Absolutely. And, you're right. Challney Girls has raised an incredible amount of over 17,000. And I don't think there are other schools in Luton that can really match up to that, when we have to remember this was just in one day. And it won't be possible without the support of our parents. And, like you said, when everyone's working together, that is when the real magic does happen. Now, Imrana, if I come to you next, your daughter just recently started high school. As a parent of a student who has just recently gone through the transition process between primary to high school, what would you say was done during that transition process that helped to put your mind at ease?
I think the key really was just really regular and open communication, especially because obviously we were still kind of in the thick of COVID and lockdown. So obviously in a normal situation where you could have transition where you can go into, school and actually visit the school, we didn't have that. So I think that really put my mind at ease, just having emails with all the details in terms of what uniform to buy, how to set up the whole kind of money for lunch online, and I think just the regularity of it was good. I didn't really feel like overwhelmed or anything, because I think that's what you really want as a parent. You want as much information as possible, and then because it's that thing, because then you become like the conduit. So I would be sitting with my daughter, and we'd be reading through all the information, and if she had any questions for me, or I was able to contact the school as well. So I think that was really, really important.
Okay, great. Now, Amna, if I come back to you, we've just heard Imrana mention, what she valued during that transition process from the school to kind of help put her mind at ease. Amna, as a parent governor, what would you say parents value most from a school generally that their kids attend?
So primarily, I think it's, what is their child learning and what they're being taught, because in the end, they go to school to learn. So, as a parent, I'd want to know what they're learning, when are they learning it. Now, Challney High School for Girls their website is brilliant. If you go on the website, you go through all the links, the curriculum, and there's a whole different areas, loads of areas on there, all the different areas. You can see what they're being taught. Some of the areas go more depth. You can just have a look through each of the areas: science, geography, English, etc. So I think, as a starting point, that's the main thing. What is my child being taught and when? And there's that transparency there. Okay, this is what they're doing. This is what they're covering. This is how many hours they're spending on this in this year, etc. So that's probably the most important. And then secondly, I'd say their concerns and feedback. So they'd want to know that their concerns are being addressed. So if you have an issue with the school, you'd like to know it's being addressed. And similarly with their feedback, so they may say you could do better in this area, or I really like what you've done here. So when they see their feedback is taken on board, it empowers parents more. They think, okay, well, I can make a difference too. So, that relationship is important, I think. And lastly, there's a lot of areas parents want to see, but what I'd say is parental engagement is important. Now, obviously, when your child is at primary school, the engagement is different. You see the teachers every day in the morning after school. You can have a quick chat about this and that. You have workshops about how they're teaching certain things. It's like phonics, but in high school it's different. Girls are a bit more independent. So things like the consultation evenings, the options evenings, the revision events, the extracurricular events, being engaged on those areas, and like the community events, the Race for Life, knowing what's going on. We've seen it through the Girls Come Home. They bring their forms, their sponsor forms. So I think as a school, parents want to work in partnership with the school to ensure that they're involved in their child's school life. So I think for me, those three areas are very important. There's many others, like I said, but we don't have time to go through all of them, but I think they're the main three.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amna. Now, Imrana, if I come back to you, in the previous half of this show, I was actually speaking with Nic Ponsonby, our deputy head teacher at Challney High School for Girls, and Rehana, who was the chair of governors. And we were discussing the barriers that specifically young Pakistani females face and the stereotypes that they are subject to. And one of those stereotypes includes parents wanting their kids to go on to become doctors and engineers and go down, the route of science and engineering. Now, Imrana, you yourself started off as a science teacher and you've now moved more into the creative arts field, and very successfully as well. And we saw this with the community events where you did win the Arts Awards. So a very huge congratulations to you for that. Imrana, what made you want to transition from being a science teacher to the creative arts field? And what would your advice be to any young Pakistani females who are perhaps struggling to break from those stereotypes?
Thank you for that lovely question. It's interesting. I think I've gone through the same maybe experiences many Pakistani girls have. I had the same, I guess, when I was younger, that kind of encouragement to pursue the sciences, and actually science is a subject I really loved and I enjoyed, but the creative aspect was something I also really kind of I guess I don't know, it just gave me a sense of purpose. I enjoyed writing poetry, from a really young age. But, I made the decision to do a degree in biology, and obviously then become a science teacher, which I absolutely loved. But it was just, I think, how else I can work with young people and inspire them. And creativity was always at the heart of it. So yeah, I'm now like a freelance creative producer, but the best thing is, I still get to work with young people, and I learn so much from them. And I think it's so important for those of us who, from the global majority, who've been kind of historically excluded from the arts. It was really about saying that that space also belongs to us. It's not just the STEM subjects, and just trying to reclaim that space and create a platform, especially for young voices. And I had the pleasure of working with students from Challney High School for Girls at the last project, which was Echoes of the Diaspora. And it was amazing, just the things that the students created, and just the way just I think witnessing their confidence grow, was so lovely. So in answer to your question in terms of what advice I would give, I would say that it's okay to pursue obviously a career in the arts, but it doesn't have to necessarily be like really explicit. Like, you don't have to go to university and do an art degree. If you enjoy something, at home, it could be calligraphy, it could be putting mehndi on. There's so many different things. It could be cooking. I think you really just kind of really own that and develop those skills even in your own time, and then you can always find opportunities to do events and actually be paid for the work. And I think that's sometimes where the barrier is, because our parents probably feel that as girls, maybe the aspiration is just marriage, or it's or even if it is to get work, the arts as a freelancer, maybe you don't get paid very regularly, and obviously there is a bit of work to do there. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing it and I'm enjoying it, and yeah, so I guess just make time for it, and inshallah the opportunities in Luton are really great, so you can find something.
And I'll just butt in there, Jawairiya. Imrana actually got me to get into something as well, so that echoes of the diaspora. I'm not a very creative person, but somehow she convinced me that it was good for me to get involved, and I don't know how I got there, but all thanks to Imrana, really. She got me into it.
You're amazing, Amna.
I'm not.
Well, that just goes to show, Imrana, and I think that's a really good example of Imrana. You are that kind of role model to people like Amna and many others. And you mentioned quite an interesting point there about, the lack of representation in the creative art fields when it comes to those from perhaps a Pakistani background. And I guess that is a reason why it is so important to expose the young girls to people like yourselves. So Imrana, what are your thoughts on, getting parents more involved by coming into schools and, showcasing what they do to kind of help girls get on board with these sort of projects from a representation sort of perspective?
Yeah, I think what it is, again, historically the arts, especially, when you're living in, the West, they're viewed in a certain way. There's only a certain type of art which is considered art. So I think the starting point really is that, what is our own lived experience and how do we want to share that? And when you start from that point, and it's so important actually, if you can just have conversations with parents, or for example, a project I worked on with Revolution Arts, and we kind of encourage young people to go and interview their own parents and grandparents and try to collect their stories, and then with the potential of turning them into monologues, which you can then showcase as a performance. So it's really about just I guess unpicking with I guess our parents' generation about what the arts really is. And it's not that thing of, it's performing or dancing or music, it doesn't have to be that, because actually from my own Islamic heritage, art has been a massive part of it, whether it's storytelling, the Quran itself, it's poetic, and that's the beauty of it. So I think that's basically what it comes down to. I think it's about having those conversations with parents, just so they feel comfortable. They know that their daughters, they're in a safe space. And obviously, and again, I think come back to your point, that's why it is important that actually we ourselves become those kind of, we start modeling, I guess, that for them. And then, hopefully the encouragement will then follow.
Lovely. Thank you, Imrana. And, you obviously worked your magic on Amna, and I'm sure, that magic will be continued to work on many others. Amna and Zeb, if I come back to you both do play a very active role in the community. Amna, with yourself being a parent governor. Zeb, you yourself are a football coach with Luton All-Stars, and I guess that kind of shows the dedication and commitment you have to helping the young people in our community. And I guess with that, kids do pick up of that when it comes to seeing their parents, and they themselves get more involved with the community as well. And just recently this week, your daughter Zara was on Inspire FM talking about Race for Life and the money that was raised. And I know in the past she has done some work with Amma as well, and unleashing potential in terms of workshops for the community. Zeb, I'll come to you first. Where would you say that passion stems from for you when it comes to getting involved with the community, encouraging your kids to do the same, and the importance of modelling it to your children?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes actually from our elders or the other people before me who've come and done some really good work. So I think the first thing to say is that it's really important that we recognize we have so many good people in Luton doing so much good work. So I know people who do things with boxing, with cricket, with other football clubs, all sorts of things. And it's really important that they continue to do that work because they become role models for teenagers who then go on to do the same sort of thing. And for myself, I think the passion came from probably about 10 years ago when I first got into coaching. What we realized was with a lot of the, what I'd call probably the underprivileged kids, they were not really getting a platform to show their skills, to get involved in clubs. They didn't really know where to go, what to do. So we started off this club, Luton All Stars Football Club, and I probably came on about a year after the guys who started it off. And I think at our peak a few years ago, we had more than 400 children. So we were the biggest football club for youth football, that is, in the whole of Bedfordshire. And that included 32 teams, which had about 4 girls teams in there as well. So now I think I would say, honestly, probably about 90% of those kids probably wouldn't have got into many teams or wouldn't know where to go. And that's not me. There's a whole team of about 50 odd coaches at its peak, doing lots and lots of good work. And it's not just the coaches, obviously the parents getting involved, bringing the kids in. So when it comes to those sort of things, I think we have to also look at the fact that what do we want these kids to do, or how do they benefit from this? So there's about 4 main aspects that they benefit from this when it comes to football especially, but probably all sports. And one of the things is, psychologically they benefit. So just to give you a brief overview, and I'm not going to bore you with football stuff here, but when I, for example, run a football training session, in my mind, I'm thinking I need to achieve at least these 4 things, and then the children will benefit from it. So one of those 4 things is physicality. So, are they getting exercise out of it? Are they benefiting from that point of view? Second thing is, are they learning anything technically, any skills? The third thing is, are they learning anything psychologically? So, could you ask them, how did you feel when you were playing today? What decisions did you make? So a lot of it is about decision making there. And then obviously the 4th one, which is quite often the most important, and is actually the answer that most children will give you. In many studies they've shown, when you ask them, why do you play football? And it's the social aspect, because they say at the younger ages especially, they say, because I want to see my friends, I want to play with my friends. They don't say, I want to become a professional footballer. They don't say I want to make £100,000 a week or any of these things. It's that social aspect. So those 4 things, again, like I said, the technical side of it, the physical side of it, the psychological side of it, and the social side of it. So all these things come into it. Now, they obviously make these children better in many, many aspects of life. So that's probably the most important thing for me, getting involved with children's football.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Zeb. And Amna, if I ask you the same question, where would you say your passion stems from when it comes to getting involved with the school community and encouraging children to do the same?
So for me, I think it's about just wanting to make a difference to people's lives, and empowering them and the next generation with the skills they need so they can make a difference to the community. Now, I feel like when we were younger, we didn't have so many opportunities. We kind of blindly made our way out in the world. I've worked, so I've worked in many different places, out of Luton, and, it was pretty much, just yourself out there against the world. But, I learned so many things along the way, and we just want to help the younger generation, sort of guide them, because we can give them that guidance, because we're now that generation that has got that experience. Our parents came here, they had to adapt to a different country, they had so many different challenges to us, but now there are things that we've learned, and we can pass those skills on to the next generation. And the way I see is, if we invest our time in them now, then our community will reap the rewards of their talents and skills in the future. Like I said, they've got a lot more opportunities, and there are so many inspirational role models for them, including their parents, including their family members, and many others in the community. So there's so much for them to look up to. And I like to just give my time, because I want to be able to help those people. People come to me for advice and guidance. I'd always like to be there for them. And I think that's why, for me, giving my time up for these things is important, because it's all about giving the younger generation those opportunities so that they can excel throughout life. And we can't help them all the time. So they will make mistakes, but we're trying to make it easier on them, because we've made some of those mistakes as we were growing up and learning, and we want to help them to avoid some of those issues that we had.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amna. Now, Imrana, you also do enjoy working with young people with, your role previously as a science teacher, but also with the kind of projects you do now in terms of creative arts. Again, Imrana, with you, where would you say your passion comes from when it comes to working with young people?
I think it's, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of how to answer that question. I think it's kind of going back to maybe what I said before. There's a lot to learn from the younger generation. So obviously, having been a teacher, now being a parent, and obviously through my work working with young people as well. I think it's just through the conversations that I have with them, and some of the, I guess, not just struggles that young people are going through, but actually all the positive stories as well. And it's just really, I guess, really lovely in the way you can see young people just interacting with each other, the way they support each other as well. And there's still, I guess, also that sense of hope that they have. And despite all the struggles and all the, I think, difficulties and challenges that we see around us, especially in the current social political climate as well, that sense of hope is really, I guess it just keeps me going. So when it was teaching science, just teaching them and looking at their faces when they've learned something new about the world around them was just fantastic. And actually, I definitely do miss that. But then I guess it's the same with, if I'm getting young people to do some writing or write a poem, and then to watch them perform. And again, some of them, they really come into their own. And I guess the best thing is when they continue to want to pursue it and they come back to me and say, actually, what, this really made a difference. So yeah, I guess it's all of those things really.
Lovely. Thank you, Imrana. I just want to say a huge thank you to Amna, Zeb and Imrana for giving up time and taking the time out of your very busy parent lives and joining me in this half of the show. You have all been absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much, Amna, Zeb and Imrana.
You're welcome.
Listeners, we have approached the end of the show now. It's been an absolute pleasure, but please do stay tuned in next time for our next show.